Just checking his own. Secondly, in the event of a fire, please make your way to the nearest fire exit, which for people on this floor are through these doors here towards the lift. Please do not use the lift and use the staircase next to the lift, down to the ground floor and exiting the building, and the assembly point is over by the swimming pool. For our guests on the third floor, again, through the door that you would have come through, back towards the lift. Please do not use the lift and use the staircase, again down to the ground floor, following the signage out of the building. There are secondary escape routes at the far end of the building if they were required for some reason. You will note, councillors, that there are some new devices in front of you on the table. The installation of the housekeeping chair.
There we go. Right, colleagues, I'd like to formally open this full council meeting. I see we've got a pretty full house here. Very good. Before proceeding with the business of the meeting, it's my sad duty to inform you of the death of our former colleague, Mick Scrimshaw. Many of you would have known Mick through Kettering Borough Council, the County Council or the Shadow Authority. Mick was, of course, for a time the chair of the Shadow Overview and Scrutiny Committee, having to step down due to ill health. This is particularly relevant to my wife and I because we were both elected in Kettering in 2003 for the first time, and on the neighbouring ward, Mick Scrimshaw and his wife Shona were both elected for the town centre. So obviously we've known him for the best part of 20 years. So it's very, very sad. I would invite the councillors and visitors to be upstanding to observe a minute's silence in honour of Mick and express our deep condolences to his family and friends, and then I will call on one or two who would wish to say a few words. Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. I'll call on Councillor Smithers first, please, and then Councillor Addison second. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sadly, as you've alluded to, there has been another passing of a political heavyweight from Northamptonshire, and again, way too early. Mick was a great debater, and I was often on the end of his sharp wit at the County Council, as you can imagine. Mick also understood the complexities of council, and that was never more apparent when he took over the chairmanship of the scrutiny committee at Northamptonshire County Council. And he had that ability to be able to get under the skin of, these complex situations that we found ourselves in at the county council. I think really it's a very sad day for Mick. You know, he will be missed by his peers, and this Conservative group's thoughts and prayers go out to his family at this very difficult time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Smithers. Councillor Addison, please.
Thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, Councillor McGee can't be here today, but he sent me some words because he knew Mick very well. When I first met Mick, when he became a Northampton County Councillor, I immediately took to his friendly way and his great sense of humour. Mick quickly got immersed in his work as a councillor on the county, representing Kettering Ward, and after his first year took on the very difficult task of the Labour financial spokesperson, and often said, "I'm always willing to learn and ask if I need to." Within a short time, Mick was an invaluable part of our group, as well as to the council. He was good at questioning on financial matters and indeed suggesting better ways that the commissioners suggested he should be chair of finance scrutiny, which I was extremely pleased about given his work rate and commitment to the group, the council and his residents. Mick had a great sense of humour and included everyone regardless of political views to have a say at his community scrutiny committee. In full time at the county, I didn't know anyone who had a bad word to say about Mick. He was clever, humorous, a great councillor, and will be dearly missed by many of us, and our sincere condolences go to his family and friends. May I add, Chair, I'm sure those words will resound with many of the people around this chamber today. Mick was a gentle man. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hakewell, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and I would associate myself with those remarks too. Mick and Shona, I can't remember if they came on in 1999, which is 4 years before yourself, Chairman, and first met him at that time. He always had great humour, and he had that ability to transcend different political views with the objective and focus solely on the people that he represented, and I know they will be sadly missing him at the same time. It was fair to say that when I stepped down from scrutiny at the county, I was delighted to suggest that Mick became the chairman, and it's equally sad in my mind that I chaired the very last NCC scrutiny committee due to his illness coming along at that time. So I would like very much personally to send my condolences to his family, and just to say that he was a brilliant scrutineer and I learned a lot from him as well. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Lee, please.
Thank you, Chair. Mick was the charismatic leader of the Labour group when I served on Kettering Borough Council. He really should have been here now. He served 2 terms on the Kettering Borough Council and 2 terms on Northants Council, where he excelled in his grasp of finances and scrutiny, as has already been said. He was a hard-working councillor, a real role model and a scholar, reading history books, visiting museums, always learning new things. With his humility and a good sense of humour, never arrogant or disrespectful, Mick embodied the Nolan principles. He loved social media. He always told us, if it's not on Facebook, it didn't happen. He would be happy to know that the message of his death has already reached 1,500 views on Facebook. He encouraged us to let our residents know what we were doing, to communicate with the voters and to be inclusive. He documented his own illness on Facebook throughout his 3 years of illness until the last few weeks. Devoted husband of Shauna and a father of 2 daughters that he was very proud of, Jess and Abby, and a fan of Nottingham Forest. He will be badly missed, but never forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. I think what is also not known about Mick was that he was an expert on foreign banknotes, Russian, I believe, And I believe also one of his daughters, he was pleased to see marry earlier this year. Is that right? Anyway, thank you. Anybody else wish to speak about Mick? Councillor Roberts, thank you.
I didn't want to let this pass without saying, as the former leader of Kettering Borough Councillor, working with Mick as the leader of the opposition, he was a gentleman, and what everybody said, I recognise that. He challenged you to do better, to do your best, and he helped me a lot at times when I needed some support, and I appreciated that. I truly miss him.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, Councillor Pengelly. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, Mick was a community champion. I think we all recognise the great work he did in Kettering. And when he had to stand down through Hill Health for this Community Commission, and I took over, I was on the phone to him on a regular basis, and I have been since, only till the last few months ago, just getting his help and advice at all times. And as others have said, he knew scrutiny better than anybody else, and the advice he gave me was really, really helpful. But on top of that, when my daughter did her dissertation for university, and I was thinking, she did it on Northamptonshire County Council and the failings, and he spent the whole day with her and just went through all the things that he could do, telling him about all the issues there. He was a politician. He was a Forest fan. He was, I would call Mr. Kettering, because he became Mr. Kettering. And on top of that, he was a loving father, and he had two lovely daughters, and I think we all agree he'll be missed by all of us.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, we'll move on, please. Minutes of the previous meeting. The next item is the minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of June. Are there any issues in relation to the accuracy of the minutes? Did I miss a page? Sorry. We'll take apologies. Thank you. Councillor Brackenbury.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. For the Conservative group, I would like to pass apologies from Councillors Kirk Harrison, Councillor Prentice, Partridge Underwood, Howells, Watt, Pentland, Carter, Maxwell, Sims, North, O'Hara, Allabone, Jelly and Smith-Haynes. That's for the Conservative group. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor McKean, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On behalf of the Labour group, I'd like to give apologies for Councillor John McGee and Councillor Valerie Anslow, and just to note that Councillor Simon Riley and Councillor Leanne Buckingham will be attending later.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Emily Fedorovich, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to give apologies on behalf of Councillor Sarah Tubbs. Thanks very much.
I'm going to pass apologies on for Councillor Eakins, who's done well as well, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jenny? Two Councillor Mercers as well. Councillor Smithers?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I note some of the Labour colleagues obviously got commitments and are coming in a little bit later. Can we ensure within the minutes it's noted when they come in, and if they don't come in, they are marked as absent? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I understand also that one or two members have told me, and probably Paul, that they wish to leave early. So if you just get up and leave, you won't be offending us. I know some are going on holidays, some have got to pick kids up and do all these sort of things. It's quite understandable. Thank you. Paul? No, that's fine. That's fine, is it? Thank you. Right. The next item is the minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of June. Are there any issues in relation to the accuracy of the minutes? Councillor Bell, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's just that I did send my apologies in for the meeting as I wasn't here. They're not recorded.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Edwards?
Yeah, pretty much the same. I sent my apologies, which were acknowledged but not recorded.
Okay, I'm sure Paul's got that. Anybody else? No? Fine, thank you. I'd like to move the minutes of the 22nd of June 2022. Please may I see a seconder? Councillor Lawman? Laura Lawman? Thank you. All those in favour of the minutes? All those against? All those abstaining? One abstention. Thank you. Then that is passed. They are passed. Declaration of interest, councillors. Are there any declarations of interest that councillors wish to make related to the item to be discussed? Items to be discussed. Councillor Wetherell.
Thank you, Chair. I've got an interest in agenda item 11 in relation to HMOs, because I have interest in HMOs.
Anybody else, please? The Chair's announcements. The Chair to make, firstly, I would like to say that this month we've been honoured by 2 visits, one from the Duke of Gloucester, but secondly, more importantly perhaps, we went to Chester Farm where we met the Princess Royal. And I have to say, what a fantastic day that was. So that is the 2 main things that have happened to me in this month. There's been 1 or 2 others that I've been to, but they were really great, and to see this county being, this part of the county being put forward. Secondly, I feel I've sent you both emails over the last month on the way we conduct business in this chamber. I feel I must say that at the last meeting, some of the comments lacked respect to each other. And I would ask, please, that that is not continued. And you think, there used to be a sign above the court when you were waiting to give evidence in London, and it said, engage brain before operating mouth as you went through the door. And I think they were very true words. Anyway, I think I've said enough on that. Thank you. Please may I see the Leader of the Council to make a brief announcement, or are there any Leader announcements on this occasion?
No announcements, Mr. Chairman.
Are you sure? Thank you, Leader. There are no public statements or public questions on this occasion. Petition. We will now move to a petition in relation to Hackney carriage fares that have been submitted to the Council. And I would add at this point that I would declare that I used to own a Hackney carriage company in Kettering. Thank God I got rid of it. Please may I see Mr. Riley, who wishes to speak, to present the petition. Mr. Riley, you have 5 minutes to address the Council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to firstly thank you all for allowing me to speak to you all today, but I shouldn't be here. I should be out providing a service to the residents of Corby. I'm here today as a voice for the taxi owners of this town and all other towns in Northamptonshire who oppose the harmonisation of fares which the Licensing Committee are currently trying to impose. Just so you all know, I'm not trying to stop drivers getting a fare increase. The 4 individual zones have all put in for a fare increases that they feel will best suit the needs of their businesses based on the years of knowledge they have of their customers. Wellingborough requested their increase in November last year. East Northants and Corby were both in March, and Kettering had to be contacted by the Council in April to put in for a fare increase. The reason for this is that project harmonisation can't be imposed without all of us requesting an increase. Hackneys are very different from private hires in how the fare increases work. Private hire operators can increase their fares at a moment's notice, so when faced with a recent increase in fuel costs, they've been able to react straight away. Hackneys can't do this. It must go through a long, complex process. The last fare increase for Corby took 11 months, so if we wanted a fare increase every year, we'd have to approach the Council for another increase a couple of months after you've already given us an increase, and would appear greedy taxi operators. We understand our customers and know what a fair price increase for them would be. This harmonisation proposal isn't it. We have met with Councillor Smithers and Councillor Eakins and were given 20 minutes to come up with a new fare proposal. This was impossible, as only Corby, East Northants and Wellingborough were represented at the table, and any decision would have drastically affected the livelihoods of Kettering drivers. We could not and would not do that. We did come to a unanimous decision agreed by all the representatives at the table that the only solution was to agree to the individual fare increases for each zone and allow 12 months to work together to find how harmonisation can work for everyone. This was dismissed. I asked Councillor Smithers why we need to have harmonisation, and his response was, because we do. The sort of response you give to a naughty child. None of this has been thought through. It's just another piece in Northamptonshire's project harmonisation, and as a resident, I'm tired of not being listened to. This is my business, which I need to support my family. The decisions that you make in here affect people's lives in ways you can't even possibly imagine. The workers having to face £10 a day increase in their travel costs. The pensioner facing a 50% increase on a Sunday. The family of 5 having to pay 50% extra just because there's 5 of them. This is not right. You get told that we don't need to charge these costs and we can charge less. This is simply not the case. With a Hackney, you get consistency, the same metered price in every black cab in your local town. You know that if you get a taxi from your house to the town centre on a Monday and it costs £4, the next day it should cost you the same. Drivers must take an in-depth knowledge test so that they can take you on the shortest or best route, factoring time of day traffic. Currently, Corby has a pass rate for this of only 25%. The licensing committee say that we can set our meters to whatever we want as long as it's under the maximum fare. This information has been taken from the 1847 Town and Police Act and the 1976 Local Governance and Miscellaneous Province Act. This is being misinterpreted. If we're all on different set meters, this will lead to confusion and possibly conflict with customers, as they won't understand that the same journey they took the day before is now more expensive just because they got on a different cab. This will only be because the driver is charged the full amount he is legally allowed to charge. They've done nothing wrong. This is even said in the current best practice guide that the council is using to implement change. Section 10.4, taxi fare tariffs are a maximum and in principle are open to downward negotiations between passenger and driver. It is not good practice to encourage such negotiations on rack or for on-street hailing. There would be risk of confusion and security problems. We are Hackneys. We pick up from ranks and on-street hailing. So this licensing committee wants to put us at risk of confrontation in our cabs. We want to work with the council, but we feel undervalued and unrespected by the council for the role we play in providing a transport solution in North Northamptonshire. We ask that you listen to what we're trying to explain to you. This is the first stage of numerous changes in our industry that the licensing committee want to introduce, so no doubt you'll be seeing a lot more of me. But today, I ask you to realise how important this decision is and allow for more time to get the decision right. In the meantime, we all need a fair increase to reflect the huge pressures Hackney operators are facing, and the only decision is to allow for the individual increases and retention of the 4 zones in North Northamptonshire. We can then sit down and get to a decision on harmonisation that works for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. Councillors, there are now 15 minutes allocated for debate on this petition. You're reminded if you're called to speak, you only get 3 minutes, and it would be helpful by the amount of hands that I'm seeing going up, if you could even keep it less than 3 minutes. Can I also remind you that this petition is an executive function, therefore council can note the petition or make recommendations but cannot determine the request contained in the petition. Right, now what have I got? Councillor Hakewell first, please, then Councillor I can't pronounce it, Copeland, and then Councillor Dalziel for a start, and then Councillor Buckingham.
Thank you, Chairman. You'll be delighted that this is as brief as it is. How long does the council have to harmonise before it is out with any law that might say you're too late? I'd just like to understand, later in this meeting we're told we can't hurry a peer review, and in this part of the meeting we seem to be going at abnormal haste. So how long do we have, by law, with the change, to actually look at this and consider it through in the way that the gentleman has just said?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Cahoon. I'm really taken by this petition, Mr. Riley. I think it's very well done and very well thought out, and wholeheartedly I support this. The third paragraph states that consistently Corby has one of the cheapest taxi rates in the country, and the service, I've been in Corby for 45 years. The service has always been impeccable. Drivers of good quality, etc., etc. And quite understandably, the taxi drivers are asking for a modest increase to keep abreast of rising fuel costs, etc. But this is not a modest, the proposal is not a modest increase. The proposal is an increase in some areas of over 100%. This has got to be it has to have a devastating effect on the black cab business in Corby. You can't go doubling fares just overnight like that and expect nothing to happen. We note at the bottom that this petition may bring about recommendations to the executive as a result of the petition, and hopefully the executive will go back and look at this and come back with a very decent and proper decision. I would point out to the leader that because we do does not qualify as a considered opinion. So, we, the Labour Group, wholeheartedly support the Corby taxi drivers. We hope that, I hate to use the word harmonise, because it smacks of harmony. There's no harmony here. It's about standardisation. And if we're going to standardise, then let's standardise down the way and keep the taxi drivers, the taxi owners, contented and keep them in business. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Dalziel, please.
Thank you, Chair. Over the past few weeks, I have been in regular contact with the guys from Corby Hackney Owners Association. They are stressed, worried and anxious about the proposed changes to the harmonisation of fares and policy, which will see Corby fares increase in some cases exponentially, and changes to policy that can only be described as draconian and unworkable. There is a strong culture within Corby of taxi use. I have lived in this town for 54 years and this culture has never changed. Taxis are affordable, reliable and historically have been plentiful. Taxis can be hailed in the street or pre-booked. They're used by disabled residents, elderly residents, parents with buggies and prams, young people going on nights out. The list is endless. We are used to a town where there is easy and affordable access to taxi services. The proposed changes to taxi fares in some cases would see fares increase by over 50%. For those people working on our industrial estates who use taxis for a 6 a.m. start, they would be subject to the nighttime rate, which would continue until 6 a.m. rather than the 5 a.m. currently. This could add hundreds of pounds to monthly costs for commuters. Corby is a town where typically our elderly residents have the exact change ready for their taxi and know the cost of their journey to the nearest 10 pence. Increases to costs or even the ludicrous suggestion that taxi fares could be set by each firm or taxi driver and you could haggle with the taxi driver at the rank would send people into a panic and pit drivers against each other. Some changes to the policy are even more ludicrous. There is no point harmonising the zones from 4 into 1 if the taxi drivers can't apply to work in the other zones as they don't know the geography and won't pass the test. There has been absolutely no impact assessment on how these changes are going to impact taxi drivers' livelihoods. And as for the consultation, it is the most complicated and arduous consultation paper which one could argue has been done deliberately to reduce response rates. It is the opinion of Corby taxi drivers that this is going to decimate the industry locally, and they are the ones with the expertise to make that judgment. Not a single NNC executive member has reassured any one of our taxi drivers that this is a positive change. If you implement these changes now, in 2 or 3 years, there will be no taxi service that would, and that would seriously affect our ability as a local authority to transport vulnerable or disabled children to school, or disabled residents to day centres, or even NNC employees to get to work. We run the risk of not being able to fulfil our statutory obligations. I would urge this executive to sit around the table with our taxi drivers and work out a solution that implements harmonisation over a number of years. Thank you.
Councillor Lynn Buckingham, please.
Thank you, sir. And how do you top that one, as well as the well thought out words of Mr. Riley? I sat in the town centre when the taxi drivers were explaining to people how this would affect them. And I had people coming up to me that were workers, that it would really impact them. Just getting to meet with families and things, and the charges that would raise there. And they all talked to me about how it would affect them. And I saw from what the gentleman was saying about, you know, how it would affect their business. You have almost a recommendation from Mr. Riley's petition to say, let's do this over a number of years. And I think I would urge the executive to listen to those words that have been said. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Best, please.
Thanks, Chair. I don't live in Corby, but I know Corby has a long history of relying on the Hackney cabs. When I was in business and industry, we always looked at things in terms of, we always asked ourselves, where does it add value for the enterprise, or how does it improve the quality of life for the customer? Our customers I see as being the council taxpayers. And I look at this proposal, and the huge amount of work's been expended already on it, and I just don't understand where the value is in doing what's being proposed. It doesn't benefit the customers. It doesn't improve anybody's quality of life. I don't understand what the basic premise is that drives us to even try and do this. Thank you.
Councillor Pengelly, please.
Chair, you've heard about the reasons why this is wrong, so now we have to look at how we can get this sorted out. I think what we've got to look at first is the 4 old town areas and look at an increase. I've all asked for an increase, I'm going back to November. Let's look at that increase now, and let's get round the table in a grown-up way and look how we can get this harmonisation in the next 2 or 3 years. Let's do it correctly, let's do it over time. It's as simple as that.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Brackenbury, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'd like to, first of all, thank Mr. Riley for his presentation and everybody for the petition which has been submitted. I'm not going to rehash the debate. I've heard colleagues' comments as well very carefully. This paper is going to be going to the Licensing and Appeals Committee on the 9th of August. And that, together with the input from this meeting and the consultation responses, and there were a number, you know, I appreciate what Councillor Dalziel was saying about the difficulties of the consultation paper, but nevertheless, there were 118 responses to the consultation, and those responses will be taken into consideration. So we understand the passion that with which you've made, with which you represent the taxi associations in Corby. We want to provide the best service that we can for the people of Northamptonshire, right through the whole area, and we will certainly take the representations that you've made on board. It will go, as I say, to the Licensing and Appeals Committee on the 9th of August, which in turn will report back to the Executive. And so thank you very much for your input. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, everybody seems to have spoken. Unless any member recommends otherwise, I would propose that the petition is noted and comments would be referred to the Executive, in which case there's no need to take a vote, providing I all have your consensus. Are you all in agreement? Thank you. Agenda item 7, councillors. just give it a moment. I think one or two are departing. Thank you, councillors. We will now move on to questions submitted by councillors. I think you've all had copies of the questions and you've seen the replies. If you're all happy with that, we can then move to the right to reply. Councillor Lee?
Excuse me, Chair, has it changed? Can we not ask additional questions?
That's what I just said.
Okay, okay, thank you, sorry.
Thank you. Right. Councillor Lee, would you like to ask any additional questions?
Funny that. Yes, please. Right, this is about sewage pollution. What about, Councillor Brackenbury, what about enforcing legislation on tributaries, brooks and dikes, because they don't fall under the Environment Agency? So do we not need to do more to make sure, well, that we combat pollution of the water in our waterways in our county? Thank you.
Through you, Chair. Councillor Lee, thank you very much for your supplementary. As it says in the answer to the question, we are not the public body responsible for sewage pollution, but you do in fact raise a fair point that there are other landowners and other stakeholders who are sometimes responsible for watercourses as well. Councillor Andy Mercer and myself are also on the North Anglia Flooding and Coastal Committee, and I will make sure that I will make representations in that committee to make sure that the sewage prevention and management is highlighted in this whole Northern Anglian region. So I appreciate the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. When we move on to question 2, you've seen the question, you've seen the answer. Councillor Lee, do you have a supplementary question, please?
No, I just want to thank Councillor Brackenbury for a comprehensive response.
Question 3, we've seen this question, we've seen the answer. Councillor Lee, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes. Why was only scant attention given to the levelling up actions identified by the Levelling Up Scrutiny Review Working Group?
Thank you, Councillor Lee. I think, again, there is this slight confusion between the Levelling Up Scrutiny Review and and its reference to left behind communities, which, of course, do form part of the Levelling Up agenda. The Levelling Up Fund, however, is a government funding stream which required specific criteria to be met for the various projects that were identified by the executive panel that considered these matters. We do want in future rounds of the Levelling Up Fund, and of course in other central government funding streams that might become available, notably in the short term the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, but future rounds perhaps of the Levelling Up Fund as they may come through, we do want to make sure that we get the best coverage for all the people in Northamptonshire, with a particular emphasis on communities that are left behind and communities that are disadvantaged, either the large identified wards of which we all know, but also other pockets of deprivation in the rest of Northamptonshire. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Question 4. We've seen Councillor Best's question and the answer. Councillor Best, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, please, Chair. Firstly, thank you to Councillor Brackenbury for answering the question. I did just sneak it in under the wire on Monday, so you've not had a lot of time. I appreciate that. At the end of your response, you state that you expect a set of timescales to be agreed for the council to progress with the preparation of its own guidance notes within this administrative year. I'm not clear whether that means you'll have the timescale established this year or that you'll actually expect to have the guidance notes in place this year. Could you clarify which of those it is, please?
Councillor Best, thank you very much for your question. We are working indeed we are working indeed to prepare the timescales and the guidance note, if we can, within this administrative year. But just as a moment of caution, there is considerable pressure, as I think colleagues around in this room will know. There is considerable pressure with staffing and priorities in the planning policy area. So we do have to be a little bit cautious. There's a lot of other work going on at the same time, but we will do our very best to meet these commitments and to move on with it, because of course it is, as you rightly point out, very important for us to do all that we can to help our carbon footprint. Thank you.
Thanks for the clarification.
Question 5, the same procedure, councillors. Councillor Hakewell, do you have a supplementary question, please?
Indeed I do.
Surprise.
To Councillor Smithers, who have you personally had those discussions with mentioned in the last paragraph, and when?
Sorry, Councillor Hakewell, thank you for the question, but I really don't understand what you're asking me here. Who do you mean? Who have I had the conversations with?
With your permission, Mr. Mayor,
Chair.
The Chief Executive and I have already started discussions with the LGA, and they agree that this is now too early. What I'm asking is, who have you had those discussions with, and when? It's simple. It's in your paragraph.
Sorry, which question are you talking about?
Question 5.
Does someone want to help the leader sort it out?
Okay,
because I can read it out again. It's on the bottom of the page.
Okay, that's fine. The LGA, I've been speaking with Mark Edgell at the LGA conference and on the telephone before to best see when it would be right for us to have a peer review. We know the importance of a peer review, but we also know the importance of stabilising this authority and you know, credit due where it's due to our wonderful officers who have stabilised this council over this very short journey. And now's not the time for an LGA review, and that's backed up obviously by the LGA Chief Exec as well, just to be sure that we get this right. And it's important that we have these peer reviews. And as you can see, we've got the Planning Advisory Service coming in very soon. And it's not the right time at this moment, Councillor Hakewell, whilst we're still stabilising services. I don't want to put undue pressure on the staff, but when the time is right, we will get them in. But that will be quite soon. And I'll be sure to keep you up to speed, Councillor Hakewell, because I know you had a long history in peer reviews yourself.
Thank you, Councillor Smithers. The same procedure again with question 6 again, which is Councillor Hakewell. And the reply, Councillor Hakewell, do you have a supplementary question, please?
Indeed I do. One's just a bit of a statement, really, is I wonder why we, as members, are limited to 50...
Is this a supplementary question, please, Councillor?
Why are we limited to 50 when we have 100?
We don't do statements.
The question I have is, how many attended out of the 448?
Councillor Howell, please.
Thank you, Councillor Hakewell, for the question. Obviously, the invitations were sent out for 448 guests. Actually, who attended, we haven't got those figures, but I would suggest the majority did attend, unless, I mean, certain people had COVID issues and things like that. So, but I'm sure you'll agree, because you were there and you seem to be enjoying yourself very greatly. So I'm sure you enjoyed the day as much as everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Question 7, same procedures again. Councillor Hakewell, do you have a supplementary question, please?
Surprisingly, yes. To Councillor Lawman, will you agree to record the way this money is allocated by ward and present it for scrutiny to review?
Thank you. Every penny will be recorded. If you'd like it by ward, I'm sure that Keir will be able to do that, though it will spread across both contracts, unfortunately, and we will happily attend scrutiny when required.
Thank you, Councillor. Question 8, the same procedures again, please, and you've seen the answer. Councillor Fedorovich, do you have a supplementary question, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I do. Just a brief comment about the fact that it's really good to see that we're obviously going through other means like social care and things like that. I think my main question is, can we explore tactics to reach those more hard to reach people, the sort of vulnerable people that we aren't providing services to? Thank you.
Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Councillor Fedorowicz. After any such incident where we have to put in emergency planning, we always will do a review of that and do a lessons learned, see what we did well, see what we might be able to do better. So absolutely that will be reviewed. And if there are any lessons to be learned from that, we will take those on board and make sure that we implement those in the future.
Thank you. Question 9, same procedure. Councillor Fedorovich, please. Do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you, Chair. My supplementary question is, can this be brought to the next EAP? It's very vague as to whether it's coming to the next one or not. I know we've got obviously we've got a plan in place, but I believe that some of that data will be coming out later in the year, and that's just leaving it far too late to decide what we're going to do with that money. Thank you.
I don't know who's responding.
I'm sure, Councillor Feverich, that Councillor Penton will allow something like that to come to the EAP. We know how much we value the input of the executive advisory panels in shaping policy going forward, and I would welcome that to happen, and we'll speak with Councillor Penton when she's back.
Thank you, Councillor. Question 10, same procedures. Councillor Armour, do you have a supplementary question, please? Could you stand, please, Councillor?
I will once it is on. Yeah. Thank you, Chair, and I thank Councillor Howe for confirming that. The supplementary that I have is, does the committee intend to keep in touch with the schools to ensure that the same level of swimming lessons is maintained from the new year onwards?
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Howell, please.
Thank you, Councillor Armour. There isn't a committee. So what's happening is the school swim service is not going to happen anymore. So it's going to be dissolved because it was a joint service between the North and the West. And actually it's far more cost effective for the schools to work directly with the swimming clubs and association, with the swimming pools and leisure centres so that they can work with the best times that they're available and obviously best costs. I know this because I'm a former swimming teacher and a lifeguard myself, so I do know exactly what goes on in these swimming pools. And actually, we will ensure that the students get the best service possible because the swimming instructors will be fully trained and regulated by the swimming pools and our leisure services. So sometimes in the past, and I'm not saying ours now, but in the past, a lot of the swimming teachers, there was one there and the rest was done by school teachers on poolside, which is never really good for the students. So actually, this will enable them to provide a better service. So they will liaise directly with the swimming pools and be able to sort out the service that is much better for them. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And the next one is question 11 is also Councillor Armour. Councillor Armour, do you have a supplementary?
I don't know, but thank you to Councillor Smithers for answering that.
Thank you. Question 12, back to Councillor Fedorovich. Do you have a supplementary question, please?
No, that's great. Thank you.
Sorry, was that? No. That was enough. That finishes the questions, doesn't it? Yeah. That finishes the questions, councillors. Executive presentations. There are no executive presentations on this occasion? Agenda item 9, Northamptonshire Statement of Community Involvement. Please may I see Councillor David Brackenbury to move and present this report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I'm very pleased to move this report. It's an important part of our planning policy and strategic development suite for Northamptonshire. This is a statutory requirement that the authority has a statement of community involvement. And what it basically sets out, colleagues, is that it sets out the suite of planning policy documentation that the council has to adhere to in arranging development of whatever nature in the future, whether it be strategic development or whether it be individual development within village settlement areas or other things. So we have at the top the current joint core strategy, which will be replaced presently by the Northamptonshire strategic plan. And then, Mr. Chairman, we have the various Part 2 local plan documents which cover the individual former sovereign areas of East Northamptonshire, Kettering, Corby and Wellingborough. And then there are the very welcome neighbourhood plans that have been made in communities up and down Northamptonshire. They all form part of the statement of community involvement, but also, and one of the most important things in this document is not just that, but it is also how we consult, to whom we consult, and how we try to make sure that everybody's views are heard in policy formulation and in how we arrange how the place-making that is going to take place in Northamptonshire over the period, probably up to 2050, is taken into consideration. So really, without further ado, Mr. Chairman, I commend this document to Council, and if I may, I'll just reserve my right to wind up if there is a lengthy debate on it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Would any councillor wish to second this item? Councillor Jenny?
Thank you, Chairman. The Joint Core Strategy, adopted in 2016, has been a great success in ensuring that development in this area has largely been carried out in places where we wanted it to be. However, as with all plans, the lustre eventually dims and the shelf life is called into question, and this is beginning to appear. The planning policy team have therefore come up with this paper as the first stage in refreshing our Part 1 plan. It lays down the ground rules for how the plan will be consulted upon. Our officers are to be congratulated upon a fine piece of work which has the support of the industry. I'm therefore delighted to second the motion to adopt the statement as set out in clause 3.1.1. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jenny. We now take debate. Councillor Hakewell, please.
Thank you, Chairman. First question is on page 17, 771. There it says that at this time, no scrutiny, could choose to add the work associated more broadly across. So my question there is, and I suppose it's close to home, but maybe Councillor Wendy Brackenbury might comment that that should go to scrutiny because it has yet so to do. My second point is to Councillor David Brackenbury. What is your definition of a stakeholder? My third point is that when we recently had a consultation in relation to a temporary stopping site for travellers in Desborough, the response I got from officer colleagues was that the funding bid application appropriates its engagement exercises with targeted stakeholders and is not a public consultation. And there seemed to be some concern that I did make it public, but I tend to believe in transparency. So could you tell me, portfolio holder, where not a public consultation and targeted stakeholder engagement is within this policy. And my last comment is on page 30. Page 30, there we are, 3.17. Some planning application decisions are determined by officers using delegated powers given by the council. More significant planning applications are usually determined by the planning committee. In Desborough recently, a new Sainsbury's supermarket was granted permission through delegated powers, and there's no question whatsoever that that was a significant decision in Desborough. So I just wonder, within the policy, if we are about to approve it, and yes, indeed we should, why as an authority on the Travellers site and Sainsbury's, we're not following the policy which has been in place for some 12 months. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hakewell. I'll come back to David Brackenbury in a minute or two. I'm sure he's noting these like mad. But Councillor Lee, please, next.
Thank you, Chair. This is a good document. I think 15 parishes responded to the consultation, which is not a lot, but maybe because there wasn't that much to remark on it. I just wonder, when parishes respond, do they get feedback on what we do? I believe that the parish that I spoke to did have its comments taken into account, incorporated in the document, but there was no feedback to the parish about it. And then one question, on page 27, 2.23, it says this report will be considered by the appropriate committee of the council. I just wanted to ask which one is that, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fedorovich, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. My main thing is I just would be interested to know the number of significant versus non-significant developments that we currently have in process, and just sort of understand more about the type, because my sort of main concern is around the developments that potentially aren't that large. I mean, for instance, the Sainsbury's issue, but yeah, things that aren't deemed significant based on the definitions that we've got here, that these won't be consulted with local town and parish councils, where we've actually seen some very small things. If they'd have gone via the parish council, we'd have learned quite quickly about some of the issues a lot earlier on. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wendy Brackenbury, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Hakewell mentioned my name as Chair of the Scrutiny Commission. I would suggest it's probably a bit early to scrutinise this at the moment, but it has gone through the Planning Policy Executive Advisory Panel, who has endorsed the draft statement of community involvement. And Councillor Hakewell will know that as Chair of Scrutiny, I'm not the one that decides what goes on the work plan. We've got a full work plan, and it's up to members of that committee, the Scrutiny Commission, to actually agree and decide what goes on the work plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else before I come back to Councillor David Brackenbury? Councillor David Brackenbury, if you'd like to answer anything.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, and I thank colleagues for the statements and questions they've raised. Very briefly, brief whistle-stop tour. The definition of stakeholder is anybody who responds to a consultation or wishes to feed into any of this process as a stakeholder, whether you're an individual or whether you're a large multinational corporation, or if you're in Anglian Water, the Environment Agency, English Heritage. There are hundreds and hundreds of stakeholders. There is, of course, a differential between statutory stakeholders who have to be consulted on various planning documents, and, of course, when it comes to it, on various planning applications, and voluntary stakeholders, but they can be anybody at all, or any organisation or group at all. There was a question about consultation, which surprised me slightly. There was a detailed consultation on this statement of community involvement, and the representations of those are available in the appendix, which comes after the actual draft plan, and you will see a number of a number of groups that have responded to the consultation. Yes, I take Councillor Hakewell's point about what he was saying about a particular application in Desborough about Sainsbury's, and this is not the forum in overarching planning policy preparation. This is not really the forum to discuss individual applications. And lastly, in case of the scale of development, the question about that is answered in page 29 at 3.11. For the purposes of this statement of community involvement, a large-scale development includes proposals for residential development of 100 or more dwellings or a site area of 3 hectares or greater where the number of dwellings is not known. And that is commensurate, as you can see, for other types of development, whether it be minerals or waste or employment or other. So I hope that's answered colleagues' questions. I thank them for the questions they've asked and move the... and before I sit down, I would also like to thank the members of the Planning Policy EAP for their hard work and their wise suggestions in making sure that this draft is as complete as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hakewell, what is it you want to say, please?
It's a point of personal clarification on my questions. I asked about the temporary travellers site. The portfolio holder did not answer that question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. As per my previous answer on the Sainsbury's site, it is not the forum to discuss individual applications or even individual proposals.
Councillor Hakewell, don't interrupt, please.
As Councillor Hakewell, I think I heard, makes the point for me, this is not an application. It is something that has not been decided upon, and it is not at this stage part of any planning policy document. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors, we will now move to a vote. All those in favour, please show. All those against? Abstentions? 1. That's passed, Councillor. 2. Thank you. Councillors, we'll move on to agenda item 10, the Health and Wellbeing Board Terms of Reference. Please may I see the monitoring officer to present this report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Before the Chair of the Health and Wellbeing Board comes in, just to explain that for changes to the Constitution of this significance, there is a requirement for full council to consider it and obviously approve. And then obviously if you do approve, we can implement it and incorporate it into the Constitution on the website, etc. But Chair, I think the Chair of Health and Wellbeing Board wishes to formally move the report.
Please may I see Councillor John Paul Carr to move this item, please.
Good afternoon, Mr Chairman, Councillors. In very simple terms, I'd like to propose the revised terms of reference for the Health and Wellbeing Board. These updated terms are to meet, obviously, the statutory requirements and functions of the board, and likewise the membership and partnership representation between bodies from NHS, public health and local government, obviously with this new council. I'd like to thank all those officers, councillors and obviously members of the board in regards to their input in regards to these revised terms. And as I said, Mr Chairman, I'd like to propose. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. And can I see Councillor Helen Harrison to second this item, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this is an important change to the terms of reference of the Northamptonshire Health and Wellbeing Board. And this has become necessary and important because of the changes to our health and social care system across the whole of Northamptonshire. As many of you will know, we now have an active integrated care system, and the health and wellbeing, the two health and wellbeing boards have some new responsibilities, and therefore some responsibilities of the health and wellbeing boards include reviewing the integrated care board 5-year plan, and reviewing the Integrated Care Board Joint Capital Resource Plan, also to consult with the Integrated Care Board on their annual report and to the performance of the ICB to implement the Joint Health and Wellbeing Strategy. So these are important changes, but I think fairly, I hope, uncontroversial. Thank you. And I will second that.
Thank you, Councillor. Does anybody wish to speak to this item, please? No, that's good. Then we'll move to the vote. All those in favour, please. All those against? Any abstentions? No? That's passed then, councillors. Thank you. Agenda item 11. Houses in multiple occupation. Please may I see Councillor David Brackenbury to move and present this report.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. Yes, well, this is a piece of work which has been going on for some time, and obviously members will remember that a motion was brought before Council at the last meeting, which we discussed, and it was we amended it, but it basically suggests that we recognise the density of HMOs in certain areas in the council area, and wish to use a full suite of both policy and regulation to make sure that we are working to make the HMO offer the best that we possibly can across Northamptonshire. As colleagues will all recognise, houses in multiple occupation do form a valid part of the housing mix, and whether it might be people who are working in not so well paid occupations, students, or other areas, it is important that they have access to good quality accommodation. But that accessibility goes further. It needs to have proper regulation. It needs also to have the knowledge and the skills of landlords, of tenants, and of other stakeholders, to use that hackneyed phrase, but it is an important one, to make sure that we are offering the right product to the right audience, in the right place at the right time, taking into account some of the difficulties that can arise with vehicle movements or increased waste or sometimes, I'm afraid, antisocial behaviour. It is a piece of work which we do welcome. We are taking it forward as carefully as we can, and you'll note, ladies and gentlemen, on page 71 at 6.1, the next steps which are going forward. There is a live online consultation which is going on now until the 9th of September, and I encourage all colleagues who have got opinions and issues with houses in multiple occupation, whether they be in wards with a high concentration of HMOs, or indeed whether they be in wards with quite low concentrations, to feed into this consultation. We will be very interested in the responses that we get. The specialist HMO officer working groups working hard on this. It will be reported, the consultation will be reported to the Planning Policy Executive Advisory Panel on the 24th of October, and I look forward to an interesting discussion on that date. And then there will be a further report back to the EAP in November to identify the way that we can move forward. So again, this is something of a cross-party piece of work. I commend it, and I commend the recommendations, move for recommendations at 3.1 to endorse this report, setting out the progress and plans. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Any seconder for this, please? Councillor Binley, please. Sorry. Thank
you, Chair.
I've got blinkers on.
I'm happy to second this, and I don't think that there's anything that I can add to what was an excellent report there by Councillor David Brackenbury.
Thank you, Councillor. Does anybody wish to speak to this, please? Councillor McGee?
Thank you. I welcome this report, I really do. I welcome Councillor Brackenbury calling it somewhat cross-party work, good cross-party work. I'd really emphasise I think the recommendations skirt around the use of Article 4. It doesn't read like we'd be particularly keen on Article 4. I'm looking forward to seeing the results of the consultation from residents in Hazeldean and Kingswood, who I think would very much get behind in Article 4. So I'd like to push for that. I'd also like to beg LNC in general, particularly the communications department, to really push this out there and get it out there and make sure it's really publicised and really reaches the people that it should reach. Traditionally, or perhaps the majority, or perhaps people who we need to answer these consultations to get the real understanding of what HMOs are like, may not be as accessible to this consultation as you may think. So I really beg to get that pushed out there as much as possible. Members, get it out, get it on your social medias, push for your residents to respond to this, because this could make a potential huge difference to lives of our residents, particularly in Kingswood and Hazeldean and other areas as well. So thank you.
Councillor Brackenbury, did you want to add to that?
Only if there's any other speakers, Chair, I'll wind up at the end with your indulgence.
Well, I don't think there are from...
in that case, Chairman, I'll be very happy to thank Councillor McGee for her comments. Yes, I absolutely get the possibility of Article 4, but I think colleagues will note that it is a piece of work which is difficult, because you have to have a very specific evidence base for the area in which you are imposing an Article 4 regulation. And it then has to be signed off by the Secretary of State. It's quite a high-level thing to do. I'm not excluding it. I think there could be areas in Northamptonshire where that might be part of the toolkit. It may well be, but that would be a very specialist piece of work. The point here is also that HMOs are not necessarily a bad thing by themselves, but they do need to be properly managed, and that the landlords, and by no means all landlords are rogues, by no means, a lot of them are very, very good, but the landlords need to work they need to make sure that what they are putting up as an HMO is viable and does not provide an unsustainable impact on the neighbourhood. So it is partly for this reason that I welcome the consultation, because we are including landlords in it, we are including other stakeholders and tenants, and your own local knowledge, ladies and gentlemen, as ward members. Many of you will have HMO, most of us will have HMOs in our own areas, and sometimes there's literally no problem at all, and sometimes there are quite severe problems. So it's something that I do exhort colleagues to come back and feed back into the consultation. Your other point, Councillor, about good communications, absolutely. We want to consult as widely as possible. I think it is important that the consultation reaches as many people as possible. So again, in your capacity as ward councillors, please publicise this consultation, especially in areas which have more dense populations of HMOs than others. But I welcome your remarks, and I commend the motion to Council.
Thank you, councillors. We all seem in agreement on that. Can we now move to the vote? All those in favour, please. All those against? Abstentions? That's carried, councillors. Thank you. I think we're going to call for a little bit of a break soon, but I think we'll get agenda item 12 out of the way first, please. Environment salary increments. Please may I see Councillor Barbara Jenny to move and present this report, please.
Thank you, Chairman. The report clearly sets out the reasons for the veerment. from the Council's contingency budget to meet salary increments for the year 2022 to 23 is brought before you as the figure involved is in excess of £500,000 and in accordance with the Council's constitution requires Council approval. A report presented to the Employment Committee on the 28th of June 2022 set out that Northants Council has a range of terms and conditions relating to pay for staff. Staffing transferring from their former district and borough councils as at the 1st of April 2021 and meeting the eligibility criteria were contractually entitled to receive annual salary increments. These increments have duly been awarded to those staff for the year 2022 to 23. However, members of staff formerly employed by Northants County Council transferred under local terms and conditions, which gave no entitlement to receive the nationally agreed annual salary increments. In fairness and equity to all staff, the Employment Committee at its meeting on the 28th of June was therefore asked to consider agreeing to those eligible staff employed under local terms and conditions to receive an annual increment on their salary for the current year. This move was supported by trade union representatives. The committee recognised the importance of treating all staff fairly and equitably in accordance with the Council's corporate plan of investing and valuing its staff, thereby becoming an employer of choice, and gave its approval to the recommendation. I would therefore ask you to fully support the Council's ability to recruit and retain staff and agree the request for a veerment of 1.15 million from the Council's corporate contingency budget to fund the salary increment for 2022-23 for those eligible staff employed under local terms and conditions. I propose the recommendation as set out in 3.1 of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jenny. Please may I see Councillor Lloyd Bundy to second this item, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second this recommendation and I reserve the right to speak.
Would anybody wish to speak to this item? Councillor Hakewell, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and to the Councillor for the introduction. 3 questions on this particular item. Number 1, why wasn't this known of and scrutinised within the budget scrutiny in January and February of this year? It's a significant sum coming up halfway through the year. Secondly, I'm minded to the debate on maintained nurseries, where a meeting of the executive here adjourned and came back with £650,000 to be vired from this same fund. My question is, that is clearly over the £500,000, and has the process taken place that that money for maintained nurseries is properly in process? My third question is, what will the corporate contingency, which seems to be being dipped into, Chairman, quite rapidly and regularly, stand at once this funding has been taken out?
Who's going to answer that one, please? Councillor Bundy, please.
Thank you, Chair. I do despair because there's questions that are being asked that quite clearly the answer is already known. But as Council will remember, when I introduced the budget in February, the contingency for salary was agreed that we would leave it in the central place, a contingency fund, until such time as it was required. So that plan was in place and we just left it in a central fund. As far as the maintained nurseries goes, Councillor Hakewell very well knows that there's still a scrutiny process going on, and that is actually coming to scrutiny, and I would suggest that Councillor Hakewill talks to the chair of Finance Scrutiny in Councillor Pengelly to confirm what's going on there if you can't remember. I can't remember what the third question was.
Can we have the third question again, please, Councillor?
Yes, you certainly can. The question was, the corporate contingency, what will it stand at following the reduction by this money? And actually, the councillor's answer was not correct. I said 650,000 should it go through the same process, and has it.
Thank you.
The question is yes, and there will be £2.95 million left in the contingency, and it's all planned for in the budget. So I just refer to previous decisions of both the Executive and the Council.
Councillor Smithers, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on the environment of 650,000, as Councillor Hakewill has brought up, that was brought to the 31st of March Council as an urgent motion, and the environment was agreed.
Thank you, Councillor. Does anybody else wish to speak to this before we move to the vote, please? Right, let's move to the vote. All those in favour, please. All those against? Abstentions? That's passed, councillors. Thank you. I think this is time. I'm going to call a short break for 10 minutes. Okay? Please don't leave the building or go too far. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. Agenda item 13, please. Motion on notice. We received a motion on notice as printed on your agenda papers. Please note I expect all contributions to be concise, and please respect the time limits that apply. A mover of a motion has up to 5 minutes maximum. All other contributions are 3 minutes maximum. And please also remember that this relates to the area of Northamptonshire, and what happens in other parts of the country are not totally relevant to this matter that we're going to discuss. Please may I see Councillor Alison Dalziel to move the motion, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's Councillor DL, but I'll accept Dalziel as well.
At least I didn't say Pascoe.
Yeah, I get that too. So members, you may recall an email from the chair of this council on the 11th of July titled Conduct at Full Council Meetings. I wanted to quote an extract from that email. Quote, "A minority of councillors have engaged in personal remarks and disrespectful assertions towards other members, which is disruptive and takes away from the quality of debate that residents expect from us." Unquote. It is a privilege for any one of us here to be sat in this chamber as an elected member, to have a mandate from our residents and to speak on their behalf. We, as a Labour group, have submitted this motion to reassert the 7 Nolan Principles of Public Life. It is clear that senior members of this council believe there have been some issues with behaviour of a small number of councillors during council meetings, and that there has been disrespect shown to those on opposite sides of the political spectrum. But the Nolan Principles go further than that. They underpin the standards and behaviour that any person in public office should hold at any time, not just in full council meetings. And for us here, that includes our committees, our conversations, our email communications between each other, and the content of our open public documents. To reaffirm the 7 Nolan Principles of Public Life are selflessness, integrity, objectivity, accountability, openness, honesty, and leadership. Unfortunately, our political landscape in Westminster in the past 2 or 3 years debased the Nolan Principles, with recent admissions from some ministers that there have been times where communications from government have not always been entirely truthful.
Councillor, I did say this relates to Northamptonshire, not Westminster, please.
Yeah,
Boris bashing, Starmer bashing, we don't want any of that. Let's talk about this council.
Thank you, I'll carry on. So we as a local council should ensure that we adopt a kinder and more respectful approach to each other. I wanted to focus on one particular Nolan principle, as I do not have time, obviously, to speak on all 7, and that is the principle of openness. On the government's own website, it states, holders of public office should act and take decisions in an open and transparent manner. Information should not be withheld from the public unless there are clear and lawful reasons for doing so. A recent policy document due to come before the Executive on the 14th of July on green waste proposal, we believe lacked openness and transparency. The paper outlined proposals to charge every household £40 for their green waste collection. The paper detailed that the actual charge per household had been calculated at 22, but the charge would actually be 40. The consultation paper stated, and I quote, "This would improve the council financial position by £2.027 million, or as the Evening Telegraph reported it, as over £2 million going into council coffers." Where was the transparency about why households were going to be overcharged by £18? And furthermore, where was the transparency about what the £2.027 million was going to be spent on, rather than just say, improve the council financial position? It is the lack of openness and detail in documents like this, and the further apparent attempt to avoid policies like this going to scrutiny, which cause public suspicion, lack of trust, and a feeling that this council is trying to make a quick buck. We could and should have done better in our communications, and it is unsurprising that a recent online petition attracted so many signatures in a short period of time. Anyway, to reaffirm, this motion from the Labour Group is about us all reflecting on our own behaviour, and where that has fallen short of expected standards, to affirm that we can and should do better. It also asks for councillors to call out and report instances where behaviour of other councillors is contrary to the code of conduct adopted by this council, which reflects and includes the Nolan Principles. Thank you.
Councillor McKean, please.
Thank you. We all enter politics to do the best for our communities. Although we stand on different manifestos, have different views, the vast majority of councillors do this for the good of our communities and our residents. Trust in politicians has been eroding in recent decades. It's important that we regain that trust. We only have to look at what's been happening throughout the country to realise we're very privileged to be here.
Councillor, Northamptonshire, please.
Okay. I'll just say that in the Labour group, we're not embarrassed to stand on these principles. The Nolan Principles of Public Life is a fantastic way to set the base for what the public can expect from our elected representatives. We need to make sure that our councillors and the candidates that seek to sit in these seats after us are here for the right reasons. This motion is just to emphasise this. It's about holding ourselves to a high standard, and the 7 Nolan principles is the bare minimum of what we can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody wish to speak to this motion, please? Councillor Lee.
There's a perception that we are now in a post-Nolan age. A perception is taking root that the judge of whether we act appropriate is the electorate. They voted for us, so we're in power, we can do what we want. But accountability, clarity about who's making decisions, all that can fall by the wayside in the name of electoral mandate. If you believe that, then there are no grounds for questioning the basis on which decisions are made. There's a risk of hubris, people drunk on power who are so sure they cannot put a foot wrong that they stop listening to other voices. Now, maintaining standards in public life takes sustained work. It is first and foremost a matter of personal responsibility and also corporate culture. I'll give you an example of Northamptonshire. I pointed out this morning that there is a public meeting that is not on our calendar on the 9th of August, a licensing committee meeting. And I was told, but everybody, all the councillors have been given a diary appointment, so that's fine, isn't it? I said, no, we want to show the public when the meeting is. Is it a public meeting? Yes, it is. It should be on the calendar. So it's a corporate culture about being open to the public. Politicians of all colours will need to focus on ways to bring a divided public with us. And that means looking for common ground and common standards. And the Nolan Principles, far from being a thing of the past, provides the standards and tools to find a clear route through. Thank you.
Councillor Helen Harrison, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the rest of my Conservative colleagues, and I'm sure all of our opposition colleagues, are immensely proud to have been elected to serve our communities. And I believe that we all were very, very pleased and proud to sign up to the Council's Code of Conduct, including the 7 Nolan Principles of Public Life. I can't see any reason why any single person here in this chamber would not vote for this motion, as it's something that we have already agreed to and are proud to have signed up to. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm getting that impression, Councillor Harrison, that everybody is for this motion. I have one more speaker at the moment. Councillor David Brackenbury, please.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I think I'd just like to echo what Councillor Harrison just said. Every member of this council was elected back in, or Councillor Best a little later, but we were all elected to this council, and the first thing that you have to do is sign your declaration of office, which expressly covers and requires you to live by and sign up to the Nolan Principles. I know that this motion has been going around other local authorities as well. I think it's somewhat disappointing that we have to expressly agree to a motion to which we are all individually signed up. However, why not? I mean, the Nolan Principles are something that everybody in this room take on board and take very seriously. Absolutely. So, yeah, there's nothing. The motion absolutely reasserts the Nolan Principles. Great, let's bring it on. We signed up to it the moment we were all elected. And my last point is if anybody does consider that any individual member of this council is in breach of any of the Nolan principles or indeed the code of conduct, they have a duty, as has been pointed out, to discuss the matter with the monitoring officer. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor, I have two more hands waving at me. Councillor Hakewell, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Like everyone else, or perhaps not so many times, I've signed and re-signed the Nolan principles, being elected to 3 or 4 different authorities. And I welcome the reassertion that's coming forward in this motion, because it's always very good to reaffirm these particular issues. I particularly, Chairman, like the LGA logo, which describes debate, not hate, from that point of view. Now, one aspect that I do find of concern, Chairman, and you were involved with the particular situation, colleagues around me were quite surprised at the comments made by one councillor about me and about the time when I was leader at Kettering. And I wanted to come back to that, but what we perhaps need to do is to find a way on the day, if a particular person, whether it be the leader or anyone else, is rude or disrespectful to another member for no purpose. I tried to come back, but I was told it was not a point of order and it was not a point of personal clarification. But at the same time, there was no other way for me to identify that at the time. Going back into talking to the monitoring officer and making formal complaints, I don't really think is the right way. It takes a long time and it doesn't actually decrement the issue on the day. So what I'm saying, Chairman, is we need something in the Constitution that if someone in a meeting such as this feels they have been disrespected by somebody, that they should have the opportunity to come back and ask your forbearance to perhaps seek that that comment is withdrawn. And I don't think there is anywhere in the Constitution that allows for that. So, Chairman, that would be my particular point, to be taken away and find a way that we can come back without being closed down, as indeed fairly I was, because it wasn't a point of order or clarification. All of that said, it might be better that the sort of disrespectful comments don't come in the first place. But that might be difficult to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McGee, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think we're slightly missing the purpose of this motion. As Councillor DL said, and Councillor Anley, and the rest of my colleagues have raised, this has not been brought before you just to fill this chamber with hot air and say that we've already agreed to this and we've already done it. This was not the purpose of this motion. I think you've missed the purpose. The purpose of this motion was to admit and recognise that there has actually been slight failings of this Nolan principle. Councillor DL gave examples. Councillor Lee gave examples. We've just heard an example. This motion should come as an opportunity to draw a line under that and move forward and reaffirm that this is actually something we all agree with and we all believe in. But to see this motion as something that we've already done without accepting the slight failures that have occurred is incorrect and missing the opportunity and the purpose of this motion.
Councillor Scott Brown, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to begin by saying I will be supporting this motion. As to vote against it, I think would imply that I somewhat disagree with the Nolan principles.
Councillor Brown, might you stand, please?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
However, I must agree with some of my other members have implied that this does seem a little bit of a waste of time. This is already incorporated in our Constitution. We all have to sign up to these principles and we all adhere to them. I'm not sure why Labour have sought to waste valuable time on the council with this motion. I must also say that I hope the opposition leader will be donating some of their allowance to their West Northants counterpart. I actually went to the last West Northants full council meeting to observe proceedings and note that this very motion, word for word, was carried there. Even children, Mr. Chair, appreciate that if they're copying from other people's work, they at least change a few words to make it not so obvious. The people of Northants deserve so much more than copycat motions simply copied and pasted for our consideration. I'd also like to remind the Council that, as far as I know, no member of the ruling Conservative administration has had to withdraw any remarks in Council due to being in contravention of the Nolan principles. I'm quite certain the opposition Labour group are unable to say the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Addison, please.
Thank you, and thank you for your comments, Councillor Brown. But as a Labour
Through the chair, please.
Sorry?
Through the chair.
I will address Councillor Brown through the chair. Thank you for his comments, but as an organisation, we do work across councils and we work together because we're united. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. It would be helpful to the chair and respectful perhaps if you could stand when you make your speeches, please, unless you have some reason, such as Councillor Bell, for instance, who has difficulty at standing at the moment. Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak to this, please? Councillor Binley again. It's the I can't.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think there's too much that I can add to Councillor Brown's excellently put points. Of course, I agree with the Nolan principles, the same as the Code of Conduct, which we all signed in most cases minutes after having been elected, because I remember it well. Not forgetting the Nolan principles are embedded in our Code of Conduct. I don't think anybody in this chamber, I certainly would hope not, would disagree with how important the Nolan principles are. But I also suspect that my colleagues would not disagree that this is a wasted motion. This is an opportunity for members to bring forward meaningful motions to this council, an important opportunity for the opposition to come forward with meaningful ideas for the council to consider. This has just been wasted. And why? Well, to take cheap shots. The situation has changed from when this motion was originally written, as Councillor Brown quite rightly points out, for anybody that's actually bothered to watch the West Council meeting, which I have, and it is verbatim. Your motion has nothing to do with local policies or even local politics. Maybe you should focus on the work of this council, on what you can do locally for the people of Northamptonshire, like this Conservative administration is doing. Instead of grandstanding and grabbing headlines, come forward with something that will help the lives of those living in Northamptonshire. This is just a copy and paste from the Labour group in the West, or maybe something from Labour Central Office, maybe. Chair, I hold here in my hand 2 officer complaints. These complaints have been referred to the monitoring officer, and I note some of the comments from the opposition about treating people with respect. So I would ask that the opposition practice that of what they preach. These complaints are about opposition councillors, not the Conservative administration.
No. Absurd.
Objection to that.
Retract.
Out of order, Chair. Withdraw that, please, Councillor.
Chair, I'm happy to withdraw that. I think the point is that, as Councillor Brown has rightly pointed out, it is not this administration that is being brought up for breaches of either the Nolan principle or the Code of Conduct. I'm not annoyed, Chair, it's just very disappointing. I feel that the people of Northamptonshire have been let down. This council and themselves. I will be voting in favour for this motion, but under protest, as I agree to uphold the Nolan principles, the Code of Conduct, due to the commitment I made back in May.
Time, Councillor, thank you.
Thank you.
No, I have 3 more speakers, please, and then the motion will be put. Councillor Smithers first, please. I've got you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Yes, that's some interesting debate. Look, I just wanted to span a point of clarification of what Councillor Lee said about the licensing meeting being not anywhere to be seen. A simple check will see that it's on the calendar on the council's website, so I'm not sure what she was looking at, but however, I'm sure that sorts that matter out for you, Councillor Lee. Thank you.
Councillor Coulter, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure this is almost certain to be unanimously passed. I think Councillor McGee gave an excellent explanation there of why this motion was presented to Council today. Really disappointing, Councillor Binley's response to it. It would seem you overlooked, Mr Chairman, when Councillors Brown and Binley mentioned West Northamptonshire, when we're sticking only to North Northamptonshire here. I'm not too sure if I heard Councillor Binley correctly or not. I interpreted it as them saying this has nothing to do with policy or politics. It has everything to do with politics and policy. That's exactly what it's to do with. This is not grandstanding. This is a very clearly put motion, very well explained by both councillors and speakers, and I just can't understand anyone not wishing to support this fully. Given the state of central government at the moment, if they had adhered to the Nolan principles, we wouldn't have the mess within government we have just now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. I think everybody is in agreement from what I'm seeing or hearing. Councillor Lee, you're waving your hand about. You've already spoken. If you're
I know,
going to
very quick reply to Councillor Smith's point. It is on the...
Wait, you cannot reply. Thank you. Councillor Lynn Buckingham, please.
Thank you very much. And I just want to reiterate what my colleagues have said about the Nolan principles. And I remember being quite proud of being elected and listening to Councillor Smith's maiden speech as leader of the council, where he again reiterated those Nolan principles, openness, accountability, but something's crept in, which is why some of our opposition councillors have raised this issue. And Councillor Harrison standing up at our last full meeting to say, let's stop taking a pop at each other. And I think that we all, if we all met each other outside of this chamber, we all say hello and we talk and whatever. And I think it's just that respect that we should have for each other. I fully support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I've got one more speaker and then I think we should move on and put this to the vote because I think you all want this anyway, but Councillor Wilkes, please.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't going to speak initially on this. We knew that this was a Labour Party motion that it's been presented all across the country. And I will just say, I really hope this isn't just a personal point-scoring opportunity. I don't think it is. But sorry if I can finish. Interruptions don't help for what I'm about to say. We are all here, nor does the sarcastic laughing, we're all here to represent our constituents and do our best. Everybody in this room is here for that purpose. We all, of course, signed up to the Nolan principles. I think we all adhere to them. The reason I'm standing up is because I may be able to add something that's useful, that helps moving forwards. We are all part of groups and associations. I think even the newly the new groups that are being elected. We're all part of groups and associations. And I'm sure the Nolan principles form part of the conversations that those associations have, amongst everything else that we talk about with council. So if there are specific groups that feel that the Nolan principles need to be brought up, then the opportunity I would suggest to bring those up are at associations, at their association level. That is the time to emphasise or remind members about them, if indeed associations feel that those principles need to be reminded. We really should be keeping valuable council and officer time for valuable council business. I think everybody would agree with that. Of course we're all going to support this today. I really hope this isn't taken as an opportunity to bring this same motion back annually or monthly or weekly. Let's just accept that we're all working towards the right principles and get on with council business. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Delzir, you have the right to finish this off if you wish.
Thank you. Yeah, just a couple of comments, please, if I may, Chair. We would not have brought this motion to this council if we had not seen the email correspondence from the Chair regarding the behaviour in this chamber. We felt that it was an opportunity really to remind everybody in this chamber really about their behaviour, and the very fact that the Chair had to send out correspondence to us as elected members tells us that sometimes behaviour has fallen short. And this was simply really to remind people that, you know, we are expected to behave in the highest possible standards, and regardless of our political leanings, we deserve to be treated and spoken to with respect. And I was here at the last council meeting where there were some comments made to other councillors which was completely disrespectful, and I totally agreed with the email which came out from the Chair. Now, if I behaved like that in my workplace, I would not have a job. My fundamental job is to be respectful and to support and to nurture and mentor my colleagues. I manage a very busy team, and I just think that it's not anything goes when you come into this council chamber. We should treat each other with the same level of dignity and respect that we all deserve. So, you know, this was an opportunity for us, following on from the email from the Chair, for us all to reflect on our own behaviour and to think that we can do better going forward. But thank you very much for the fact that it's going to be supported.
Thank you, Councillor. No more speeches. We will now move... Sorry? We will now move to the vote. All those in favour, please. All those against? Abstentions? That's passed, councillors. Thank you. Agenda item 14, urgent items. There are no urgent business on this occasion. Thank you, councillors and officers. That now completes the business of the meeting. I now declare the meeting closed. Thank you.
Oh my God.
And unnecessary. And unnecessary. Threatening.
At least it wasn't Jason.